This game is heating up, folks. Frank squares up like a butcher block on defense. Audie with the fadeaway. She's on fire. Literally, that is. The net has been burned to a crisp.
Shane Gillis, live on stage.
I'm a bit of a history buff, which, by the way, that is early onset Republican.
His biggest tour ever is coming to Des Moines.
If you're a white dude in your 20s and 30s and you're like, I can't stop reading about World War II, it's coming, bro. Right?
See Shane Gillis with his unmistakable comedic style. Live in Wells Fargo Arena Saturday, May 31st. Get tickets now at iowaeventcenter.com. For more, visit ShaneMGillis.com.
Two guys, two Chris's, one network. Iowa Everywhere. It's time for Two Guys with Chris Williams and Chris Hassel. Presented by Fareway Meat and Grocery from the Channel Seed Studios. Where? Everywhere. Live and always on demand at Iowa Everywhere.
Welcome to the program. It is March the 10th, a Monday. I'm Chris Williams, joined as always by Chris Hassel. We are in the Channel Seed Studios. We are presented by Fareway Meat and Grocery. We are going to have a record high, potentially, according to Amber Alexander today.
75, I think, is what I saw.
Wow.
Yeah, suck on that, Hassel.
Steamy like a grill, smoking some Fairway meat.
You're goddamn right.
Well, good for you guys. Last time I talked to you, you were dealing with a blizzard.
Well, you know, when in Rome. I hate that saying. When people say that saying, I want to just punch them in the face.
Why does it
matter.
bother you so much?
I don't know. I just really, really hate it. There was this one person I knew in college who always said it, and I think it really left a mark on me because I didn't really like that person. Welcome to the show. We have a lot to talk about. The Hawkeyes.
They made it. They made it to the tournament.
This is
the Big Ten.
Congratulations, Chris. You're participating in March Madness. This is awesome.
Got that 15 seed in the Big Ten tournament. Here's how bad things are nowadays with the ridiculous amount of power conference teams that are included into the NCAA tournament, and now there's another postseason tournament called the Crown.
I didn't know anything about this until our text chain this morning.
Nebraska didn't even make the Big Ten tournament, but they'll probably play in that Crown tournament.
They were a bubble team going into that game.
Yeah,
according to some people.
It's so
that makes
ridiculous.
no sense.
Just because of the
You're
way
right,
they started.
though.
They were 12-2 to start the season. That's
I
why
did,
I do think that the committee made a mistake years ago when they stopped factoring in how you're playing at the end of the year compared to the beginning.
I did have a former committee member reach out to me about a tweet of mine.
Yeah?
Wasn't upset, but kind of called me out because Matt, maybe you can pull up that tweet. I tweeted it right after Iowa State's win about how I said I think this probably locks Iowa State into a 3 seed because we've seen how they just don't factor in conference tournaments very much anymore. And it was pointed out to me that fans and media don't understand generally the point you're making about how it truly is looked at like 32 games and all these separate data points, and that the game in Kansas City or that game at Kansas State means exactly the same as the game, you know, in December or whatever. And he was pointing out to me that we want the recency bias to be, but that's just how we view it. And he was explaining to me, like, it's not that we don't factor in the conference tournament. It's that it doesn't mean as much as fans and media think it should at the end of the season.
And I get that. Like, I understand that, you shouldn't be able to move up a seed line with each win you get in that tournament. But it's been pretty clear to me over the last few years that these games are not valued as much as a neutral court game in November. They're not. I really don't believe that. I don't believe that an Iowa State win over a top 20 net team in this tournament is going to have as much of a bearing on what the committee decides as a top 20 net win on a neutral court in November, because they have all those data points already. I think that it's so complicated that they lay everything out and then they box themselves into a corner where they can't make these games matter as much as they should.
Mm-hmm. I think it's all fair. I think it's all fair conversation.
Because if Iowa State wins 4 games in 4 days and, you're beating BYU and Houston and whoever else, that's a huge – adding those games to your resume?
They beat Houston by like 30 last year.
Yeah, and it did not matter.
Yeah.
Didn't matter at all. That's why I think I would push back on you just a little bit. It's
not me. I'm passing along what a commemorative.
I'd push back on you saying that they're locked into a 3, because if they were to lose to like Cincinnati, I could see them getting a 4.
So it can't help you, but it can hurt you.
I think it's certainly possible that.
I don't think they will lose.
Yeah, you might be right.
I think it's going to be really hard to move up to a 2. I think it's possible though, because when you look at all those teams competing for 2s and 3s, they've all taken a lot of hits recently.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, all of Iowa State's direct competition is struggling. It's not just them. You've really got this top tier, and then there's clearly everybody else behind them.
How the hell did we end up on? We were going to start with Drake.
Well, I know. I just We started talking about the tournament, and we.
Yeah, you started talking about Iowa making the Big Ten tournament, and then I was shitting all over Nebraska, still making this postseason crown event where I think they pay the players.
Yeah, that's great. Good for them.
Good for who?
I wouldn't do it. Like, if I'm one of those teams, like, I'm getting moving in the portal. I'm not going to play these extra games anymore.
That's tough, though, because if it's that crown thing and money goes to the players, you would be taking money away from them, would you not? If those players decide to play it.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of up to them.
Yeah, I think you leave it up to the guys that are still on your team.
Mm-hmm.
And
most of these guys aren't going to be there next year anyways. You're either going to cut them or they're going to transfer. So,
but some of them are seniors and they want another go round. Like, what if?
Look at you getting soft on us here.
I'm just saying I think you have to do that if you're a coach. You can't be taking money out of your players' pockets.
So that crown one, that's in Vegas?
I guess. I
was just looking on their website. Our friends at Circa are one of their sponsors.
Oh, really? Circa's paying the kids?
They're a founding partner of the College Basketball Crown.
Where is it at? Is it in like a ballroom or something?
Well, they're all over. MGM Grand, T-Mobile Arena is where like the final is. So,
but it's only teams from the Big Ten, the Big East, and one other conference.
Well, it's got to be a Fox. Oh, I remember we talked
Big Ten,
about
Big
this.
East. What else does Fox have?
I remember when we talked about this because this was like a direct shot at the NIT when this thing first came out.
It's so stupid.
Their fan fest is at Circa Stadium Swim.
Well, speaking of Circa, let's promote Saturday. If you want to go and watch the Big 12 championship game, you can do it with Murph Van Winks. Sipker's going to be there. They're going to be at Wellman's Rooftop and Pub in West Glen on Saturday. This upcoming Saturday starts at 6 o'clock, where the Circa team will be there with swag, all sorts of good stuff. These parties are always fun. I really genuinely enjoy going to them. The Circa team is awesome. So get out there if you don't have plans, if you're not going down to Kansas City, if you're an Iowa State fan, or if you're just an Iowa fan and you just want to hang out with the guys. you're welcome to join them on Saturday
Hey,
at Wellman's.
Iowa could be playing
They
that
could be
day.
playing in the semifinals of the Big Ten. Who does Iowa play? What's the bracket again? I actually didn't think they had a terrible.
No, it's not a good draw. They play
State.
Ohio State,
Oh.
and then if they win, they have to play Illinois. It's not,
That's a huge rivalry game.
I don't know who. I thought the other options for them to play were like Minnesota and they would have had a much better shot
Oregon.
against a
Wisconsin.
Minnesota, a Northwestern. USC's playing like crap right now. Ohio State is right on the bubble. I mean, they could do this same thing to Nebraska. They ended Nebraska's season. If they beat Ohio State, that ends any hope that they have.
Fran. Killer.
So if they beat Ohio State, then they play Illinois, and then I think it's Maryland after that. So are we starting with Iowa?
No,
You
let's go to Drake, and then we'll get into the whole coach situation.
I don't think we need to get into the coach situation right now because I think we owe them the benefit of the doubt. We can wait till the
Whatever you say, Mr. Hawkeye. Catching
Let's
strays
start with
all
Drake.
over.
Come
I
on,
want
baby.
to talk about the C+ thing.
We will
Can we-
absolutely
okay.
talk
Yeah.
about the C+.
We got to talk about this. That's what I meant by the coach thing.
Okay.
Drake just routes Bradley. 63. Got a little bit hairy on.
You missed
on
a good transition here, Williams.
Excuse me?
You could have gone from C+ to D+ because Drake had
yes.
a famous slogan,
Who could forget?
the D+ slogan a few years back.
Drake leaves no doubt that they are the kings of the valley. 63-48 against Bradley. Again, it got a smidge hairy on Saturday for just a little bit, but they, I this proved what we saw most of the season, that they're the best team in this league. Glad that we don't have to wait till Selection Sunday with this basketball team. And what a hell of a job Ben McCollum's done, man. What a hell of a job to have this team full of, you look at it at the beginning of the year and you just, I think people in the Knapp Center probably didn't feel this way, but as an outsider, you're like, got to have a little bit of a rebuild here, right? Like you got this D2
I think
guy,
the people in the Knapp Center felt that way too.
and look at them. They may have they have just as good of a chance to make a run in the tournament this year compared to last.
30-3. Insane. You want to talk C+, D+, this is an A++ for Ben McCollum and Drake. I mean, who could have possibly seen this coming? And they challenged themselves in the non-con as well. They beat Miami. They beat FAU. They beat a Vanderbilt team that's going to the tournament. They beat St. Ambrose. They played St. Ambrose and won 90-35. It was at that moment I knew this was going to be a magical season. And, of course, the Kansas State. They had that little trip up at the start of Valley season. Remember, they lost at UIC, then lost to Steve Prohm and Murray State at home, and you're thinking, okay, maybe that was a little bit of fool's gold. And all they've done
Prohm
since
got
then.
fired over the weekend or stepped aside, whatever you believe.
He's done. They lost one game the rest of the way, and that was a 2-point heartbreaker to a Bradley team that I still believe Bradley is a lot more talented than Drake. But Drake is a better team for whatever reason. It's funny because this was a matchup of a couple coaches that could be on Iowa's watch list, Brian Wardle and Ben McCollum. There's Dolph, the Bulldogs.
He's even wearing the Ben McCollum gear. That's cool.
So many people were in that. That's awesome. And
the Drake advantage, your potential plus our opportunities. D+.
I was dreading having to wait it out to Selection Sunday and listening to all these pundits, these bracketologists say that Drake doesn't belong at 29-4. Dreading to have that conversation all week long and having to make the case for a 29-4 team. Well, thank goodness they went 30-3 and it didn't happen, and they just ran away from Bradley in that game. No doubt. And I don't know. Does this team have a better chance to win a first-round game than the other Drake teams did with Tucker DeVries? I don't know.
Wait till the matchup comes out to make that decision.
Absolutely.
My point is it's not worse. right?
It's all about the matchup. You know, you see a team that like a Maryland that has all kinds of talent. I wouldn't want that. I don't want them playing Kansas.
It's very realistic that they could be opposite of Iowa State like they were last year.
Oh man,
honestly, because like if they're in the 6-11 game, and Iowa State's in the 3-14.
Yeah, are they going to? Most bracketologists have had them as a 12 this whole way. I could absolutely see them in the 11, maybe even a 10. I could see them jumping up to a 10 because of their record and what they've done.
I think they deserve to be a 10.
I agree.
I do because of the regional thing and not wanting these teams to travel if they don't have to as much. Like they could very easily be in that same pairing or in that same quad as a 3 seed Iowa State. Let's go to our Kelderman Manufacturing Bigger, Better, Bolder, because we're all featuring Bulldogs today, and it can be a part of this conversation.
Bigger, better, bolder. Built by Kelderman Manufacturing.
I'm going to go big picture here and give mine to Brian Harden and, just his –
that's a good one.
His entire staff of that athletic department because, man, that's a hard place to be this time of, in all of college athletics where if you have a good player, like I'm friends with Eric Henderson, the head coach at South Dakota State. I've known him for 15 years since McDermott was at Iowa State. And like every year it's like whoever his best player is gone. Like, really whoever his like 3 best players are just gone. And you're constantly so Drake is constantly in that fight. And everybody's going after your coach. Anytime you're successful, they're going. So you're playing defense against your players. You're playing defense against your coach. That specific job is in this college sports hungry state without pro sports, where pretty much not everybody. So don't. There are like just exclusive Drake fans, but most people in this state like Iowa or Iowa State, and then they're choosing to be a Drake fan too. On top of it, like the casual type of fans. So you have like so much competition. And the job Brian has done, like when he came out, when he started this, like I was doing talk radio in Des Moines, and like we barely even recognized Drake. Like it was so irrelevant. And Ross and I talked all the time about you've got to find a way to make Drake cool. And he's done that. Like the alcoholic games, he jumped in on that really quickly. He and then the hires he's made, like let's say just in a fantasy world, McCollum goes to Iowa. It's like he should start getting finder's fees for these guys, right? Because he is everything he's touching right now is working, and of course the coaches and players deserve a ton of success. But Brian and his staff have done just an immaculate job. In a really hard time. It's never been more difficult to run a mid-major athletic department like that. So Brian Harden, he gets mine today.
100%. And I know Drake fans are thinking it right now. Like, yeah, we'll lose players, we lose coaches. Brian's going to have some real opportunities to go elsewhere. I'm sure he already has, but the opportunities now that he's found McCollum again and put that stamp on it, and they've won another title, like he's going to be able to get a big-time AD job pretty damn soon. And I know he loves it at Drake, and I'm sure that's what's kept him there as long as he has been there. But you're right. I mean, it started with Nico Medved, who was there 1 year and just totally burned Brian, and goes out and follows it up with Darren DeVries, who, look, he had never been a head coach. He was a longtime assistant under Greg McDermott. Comes in, we know the job he did, and then boom, right away with Ben McCollum, who had never been a Division I head coach. He was D2. Mm-hmm. We loved the hire, but I'm sure there were a lot of people that wow, geez, he's never even been in D1 at all. And look what he's done with the women's basketball program as well, which has been so great. Jenny Baranchek goes to Oklahoma. I mean, she had a great run there. I couldn't be more impressed with what Brian Harden's done at Drake, and certainly I hope he stays, but
he's
the resume
really
he's putting together,
likable guy too,
extremely down to earth.
Iowan.
And he knows his role. Like, he knows he needs to make the rounds. He needs to talk to media. He needs to get on the ground with fans. And I think he's pushed all the right buttons.
All right. I know Matt is on this, and then we'll move to Chris. What do you got, Matty?
Is Bennett Sturts the best story of college basketball this year?
I don't know if he's the best, but I was thinking about him, Matt, watching that game on Sunday, and I was thinking that's a guy, like, I'm looking at this guy, and I could see him, like, in a Sweet 16 being, like, the big story, the underdog guy that everybody wants to root for. He fits that, doesn't he?
He's like 6'4", $180. He's like a smaller dude, but, man, he's fun to watch. He carried Drake through that tournament. He was the Arch Madness Missouri Valley Player of the Year, Tournament Player of the Year. He's just so much fun to watch, and it's just incredible that he went from Division II to make the jump up to D1 in the Missouri Valley and become the Player of the Year that he is. It really just goes back to the testament of the job that Ben McCollum has done, developing players, being able to keep that continuity from Northwest Missouri all the way back up to Drake. Like, it's really impressive, guys. I mean, I cannot wait to watch him in the big dance.
And he's only a junior.
Yeah, he's got another year. People want him up in Ames.
I'm sure they'd want him everywhere.
Sign me up
Cyclone
right
Larry's,
now, baby.
Cyclone Larry's ready to.
I even saw somebody sent a mock draft to a group chat where he was in the first round of an NBA mock for next season.
Yeah,
I'm telling you guys, that high-level D2 basketball is really good. Hassel, you've seen it. Like that. It's not like it's not what. It's better than a lot of these low major D1 schools. I mean, considerably better. I've done some play-by-play at Northwest back in the day, and like it's really good basketball. So no, great pull, Matt, and that whole deal. I hope it gets some national attention. Just these D2 dudes, and because it's a cool deal. What do you got, Hassel?
I'm going to give just a honorable mention to someone on the Drake women's team, Katie Dinnebeer. The season she has put together.
Unbelievable.
And it started with, she put up 40 against Iowa, 39 against Iowa State, and she has finished the regular season with just one incredible performance after the other. I think she's gone like 30-plus points in 5 straight games, and they need it. Like, it's not like Drake is running away with the conference and blowing everybody out. Like, they need all of these points. I think they're the 4 seed in the tournament this week. So I'm blown away by her offensive prowess and just the consistency every game to just go out there when you are number one on the scouting report. And the one thing they're trying to do is shut you down, and they can't. And you still get 30 every night. That's really impressive. But I'm going to go a different way, and it's Price Sanford for me, who really stepped up yesterday for Iowa. I mean, in that first half, things were starting to go the other way. Like, Nebraska had the early 6, 7, 8-point lead, and Price Sanford started knocking down triples, putting Iowa on top, and what he did for his brother, getting his brother another game, not letting his career end without a chance to play in the Big Ten tournament. I thought that was just an outstanding performance from a guy that, it didn't do much last year as a freshman, has made a big jump and has become one of Iowa's top players here down the stretch. They needed him yesterday, and he was all over the boards too. Like, how bad Iowa's been on the boards this season. Sanford scored 16 yesterday and had 11 rebounds.
Kind of reminds me of Peyton at the end of his sophomore year, right?
Yeah, Peyton made a big jump his sophomore year too. Yep.
It feels like they're on the same trajectory there.
Mm-hmm. Really impressive.
I mean, it's another reason why Iowa should really consider keeping Fran McCaffrey around. I mean, the recruiting class.
Yeah, I know all you Iowa State fans. There were some There were some polls over the weekend that got a lot of play. The poll from Murph and Andy started it all off. What grade do you give Fran McCaffrey? And I know a lot of Iowa State fans were giving him an A.
You got nuked. Nick Bear came in and just slapped you across the face.
The man-bear pig. Half man, half bear, half pig.
We'll
Nicholas
get to that,
Bear.
but it's going to be 77 bleeping degrees today, and you need to call the daggum Kaburski brothers for their lawn fertilization and weed prevention program. There's nothing like when you walk outside and your lawn looks 15 times better than your neighbors, and you go, suck it to them. I got the Kaburski brothers on my side, biatch. You can go to KaburskiBrothers.com and get more information. You got to get that fertilization going soon, though, because it's warming up. It's time to go.
Oh God, things are gonna be growing like crazy today.
Yeah, it's time to go with the daggum Kaburski brothers. So Nick Bear called you out. And I no disrespect to Nicholas. It's just, how long ago has it been since he played? What, 5 years?
More
3
than that.
years? 4 years? 5?
I mean, I feel like, I don't know, what was his last year? 2018 maybe?
Yeah, whatever it was. Like, I remember watching Nick. Everybody liked Nick. He was a great story. I hadn't heard that name in so long. So when I saw him kind of pick a fight with you on the Twitter over the weekend, I had to like double take. Let's dive right into the drama, because I do think this is a fascinating conversation about what era or what grade would you give the Fran McCaffrey era at Iowa. I mean, really, there's so many layers to this. It's like, how much stock do you put in the NCAA tournament compared to a regular season? Are you one of those people that, I mean, you gotta factor in what he took over,
right? And I think you do. You do factor that in.
I think you factor in all these things. You gave them a C+, which I thought was, honestly, like, if I had to give him a grade, it would be a B- or a C+.
Van Winks, what would you give him?
One of the two.
The entire tenure. We're not talking just wins and losses. We're talking everything here.
I think in the poll I voted for a C.
C was the most popular answer.
I would pull up the poll right now, but Twitter seems to be down, so...
Oh, really?
Oh, bummer.
Well, what in the hell? I honestly, my initial thought was, man, it's real close between a C and a B. A B-, C+. So I said C+ when factoring everything on and off the court. And
is it your shtick to malign the program for engagement, to quote Nicholas Bear?
Because, there's nothing that drives engagement like someone pretending to be an Iowa fan who isn't. Like, what's in that for me if I'm just pretending to be an Iowa fan? Like, what is that?
People
I don't
say
even
that
live
about
in
me
Iowa.
with Iowa State all the time. They still think that I'm a Hawk after 20 years of running Cyclone websites. They still think that I am faking this, and they think that you are faking being an Iowa fan and are actually an Iowa State fan. Isn't it unbelievable? It'd be a miserable existence.
It really would be. I mean, it's bad enough being an actual Iowa fan, but to have to fake it for what? Why? Do I get like money from engagement?
I'll say what you may not say here. All this did to me was confirm that a lot of these McCaffrey players just sit around talking about you. The McCaffrey kids, Fran, Bear,
What?
like that they just sit around in the locker room. What's Hassel saying today?
What was ironic about this is like Nick Bear was a player that I had a really good relationship with. I mean, it wasn't like we were hanging out or anything because I was at ESPN at the time, but he was one of my favorite players to watch. I would tweet about him constantly. We would interact all the time not all the time, but we would interact several times on Twitter. And even after his playing career was over, I think we interacted a couple times. And I really liked it from Bettendorf, which is where, I was born there. My dad lives there. And so I didn't know he had these feelings, but that became clear there. Could pull that tweet up again, Matt, because Twitter's down. I can't pull it up exactly what he said. Just in response to me saying that, it should be a C+. He said, "Hey, Chris, Nicholas Bear here. I know your shtick is to malign the program for engagement, but this is disingenuous even for you. All-time winningest coach in program history. Took Iowa from a bottom dweller to perennial top half Big Ten finishes and Big Ten tournament title. Developed National Player of the Year, so on and so forth." I mean, it's as if I said, Fran gets an F, and I think he should be fired immediately and never let back in the state of Iowa. He's a horrible person. It gave him a C+, which I think is very fair, especially when you look at the results of the poll. I mean, I think most people would give him either a C or a B, other than Iowa State fans who give him an A because they want him to stay.
Correct.
And I broke it down, kind of how I got to that C+ grade. I give him an A for the immediate rebuild from the Licklider era.
Absolutely.
That was over 10 years ago.
This is all like part of Fran's Iowa portfolio. You have to consider all of these little pieces of the pie here.
So he took over 15 years ago. That whole thing ended 10 years ago, the rebuild. Over. I mean, we rebuilt it in a couple years. You get an A for that. I think player development, he gets a good, solid B+. Like Luka Garza, amazing.
The
Murray twins, great stuff there.
Marble.
There were a couple of guys I thought that were really, really good, but were never reached that next level. Like a Utah, a Peter Jock, even a Peyton Sanford. Like you get to a certain spot, but there's like not that next gear. That's the only thing that kept it from that.
Where would you put Marble in that conversation?
Yeah, I thought he was really good, really, really good. I don't know if he had.
I thought he just pure talent may have been Fran's best guy is when you had him as like a freshman.
Boy, that's a good pure. You're talking pure talent.
That's probably, I'm just saying when you just looked at him you're like, oh man. Like that guy,
he was great.
Like you didn't think that of Keegan the second you saw him, right?
No.
Yeah, that's my point. Like
that was a lot of hard work, and so I give him a B+ for player development. Just strictly wins and losses, I give him a B. Never challenged for a Big Ten regular season championship. Obviously, never won in the NCAA tournament. Had the one run in the Big Ten tournament, but always pretty respectable. And as Nick said in that tweet, they were consistently top 10, or not top 10, top half of the Big Ten. What are you laughing about?
Charles goes, he really developed Macy Daly.
Oh, God.
I was looking up. There's
all I can hear is Fran, or is Dolph saying Macy Daly. Sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt you. You were on a roll there. I apologize. That was unprofessional of me to do that.
Well, there's an article out there that's ranks the top rated players that Fran McCaffrey brought in. It's like Joe Wieskamp was number 1. Adam Woodbury is actually number 2.
Yeah. Woodbury and Gazelle, they never really reached their top 100 in the country potential. I mean, I think they turned into really, really solid, good players by the end of their career, but never.
I want to go to. There's two things about Fran's era that stand out to me. Obviously, it's the NCAA tournament thing, and just put it in a let's say Iowa State this year, right? His if you would have given fans overall record, they would be disappointed in this year's results. Nothing else. Don't talk about injuries. Don't hey, November 1st, this is what's going to happen in the regular season. Fans would be like, oh, that kind of sucks. It's not terrible, but we're hoping for a little bit more. If they would roll now and get to an Elite Eight, fans wouldn't care.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So the point,
you get to the Elite Eight and you forget all the shortcomings of the season.
The point is that is how we judge this sport, fair or not, to coaches and players. A lot of times it's not fair. The best team doesn't usually win this tournament.
Right.
But it is a reality, and another reality in this conversation is that Fran McCaffrey has traditionally been terrible as a coach in the NCAA tournament. You cannot deny that.
And that was one of my grades as well. I'm kind of going from the highest graded to the lowest graded because I've got about 6 different things I'm factoring in here. So immediate rebuild A, player development B+, wins and losses B. NCAA tournament is a D+. You had some decent, fun first-round wins early on in the McCaffrey era. Then it was just complete disaster. I mean, meltdowns. Oregon, when Iowa was a 2 seed, Oregon a 7. Oregon looked like the 2 and Iowa looked like the 7. They ran Iowa right off the floor. Didn't even look like they belonged in that game. And that was supposed to be the best team of the McCaffrey era. Then, after that, you lose to 12-seeded Richmond, a Richmond team that wasn't even close to the NCAA tournament before they just went on a run in the A10 tournament and got the automatic bid. Richmond beat you. And I remember in that game, Murray just kind of disappearing and not touching the ball for the last 10 minutes of that game. And then you play Auburn, and I think that was an 8-9 game, and Auburn beats Iowa fairly easily. Like, I didn't think that was much of a game, and that was it. That was the last time. So D+ for NCAA tournament. The new era of the portal and NIL, that's a D from me.
That was my other sticking point on this conversation.
Because it was kind of an immediate pushback from Fran. He didn't embrace it right away. And that I felt set them back a little bit when this whole thing started. You know, the transfer portal really started ramping up. And, I mean, it's a coach's job to drive passion
and to evolve.
And excitement from the fan base. And this kind of goes into the last grade here, which is fan engagement, and that kind of, because it kind of bleeds into the NIL as well. And fan engagement it's a D-. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt for bringing the fans back in at the start. But the fan engagement here at the end is as bad as it's ever been at the University of Iowa. This is the lowest attended season on record for the Iowa Hawkeyes, and it's completely apathetic. Fran not only did he not go above and beyond, he didn't even do the bare minimum to try to engage the fan base. Won't do media, won't do any grassroots things to try to drum up support, like to get people in the seats. Because you see that from, I remember Darren DeVries last year at Drake, like he was walking around campus knocking on doors, asking students to come to the game. And I'm not asking that of a guy that's the head coach at Iowa. And I'm sure that Darren's not doing that at West Virginia. But there's certain things like you can't just sit there and just sit back and, well, fuck, they don't appreciate us. They're not going to show up. Fuck them. We'll win without them. And not only that, but like at times, some of his players and family members have been, they've gone at fans. They have bitched about the fans and the lack of support. And that all goes into it as well. So this isn't just a C+ grade based on wins and losses and development. This is everything. And look at where this fan base is right now. Not only are fans not showing up to the games, in this NIL era where you need money from the fans, they're not giving it because you're not giving them a reason to buy in. You have to drive that. That's on you. That's a reflection of you. So that is why I gave him a very fair C+.
I think it's perfectly said. The NIL piece especially, because that's the biggest. When I was going through the replies to that, everybody's like, oh, well, he doesn't have any resources.
Right.
And that's what Izzo said. And it's like, that is on the head coach.
Mm-hmm.
It just is. And like for a guy Fran's age, he probably resents the hell out of that. Like he probably, I'm guessing, Obviously, I've not spoken to the man. He probably thinks that's not fair.
And I don't think he thinks it's his job.
Yeah, which is why a lot of guys his age have gotten the hell out of there. Lon Kruger, right? Like a lot of these guys are just, I don't want to do this anymore.
The first comment today from our show was on YouTube from Ryan McGee, who is asking for our thoughts on the Swarm giving more NIL to women's basketball than men's. No wonder they're terrible. Terrible money allocation. And the reason why is because the fans who are giving the money are saying, give it to the women's team.
Yeah, they're allocating it. They can do
which
that.
You can do. If you give a certain amount of money, you can say, I want it here. I don't want it there. So that is why. Because because fans are engaged with the women's team. They love the women's team. They sell out all the games. They don't with the men.
Have you ever seen an Iowa women's player tweet about the fan base?
No. But they're
how
showing
many
up
times
for those
have we
games.
seen the men's team do that over the years, though, is my point.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, if I'm a...
Look, yeah, if I was a player, I would be... It would hurt
It's
my
frustrating to
feelings
me
too.
as a player. I don't blame those guys for being in that headspace because you work so hard.
Mm-hmm.
And it, like, the reality is that they haven't been that bad. That's what makes this so difficult.
Correct. And I think that's what makes... So all of his former players love him for the most part, and I totally get that. And I said in my response to Nicholas, I was like, I totally get you defending your coach. I would expect you to do that. I don't think they understand, though, that this is more of an issue with the lack of connecting with the fan base. That is why this is ending. It's not because of the fact that he never got to a Sweet 16 in 15 years. That alone is not why Iowa has to move on. It is because there is now no buy-in from this entire fan base. It was the most pathetically attended season in Iowa basketball history. And even fans that had season tickets, thousands of them were not showing up per night because they just don't care anymore. That is the worst thing that could possibly happen to a program. It's not a bunch of losses. It's fan apathy. It's the loss of fans giving a fuck. And that is what's happened to Iowa. And that is why, if they want to save this program, they have to move on right now.
Yeah, as Circle Herc points out, you gave him an above-average score, too, which was what was so flabbergasting about that whole situation. I want to thank our friends at Game Day Men's Health. I started my journey with them a little under a year ago. You know when I first realized that the T was working, asshole? It was when I got back from the NCAA tournament. I always feel like shit because I'd just been eating like crap and traveling and drinking and it's softball season, so I got a coach, right? Got the Turtles coaching two teams last year.
God, the Turtles are coming back soon?
We're running it back, man. We got to trying to win our second championship in a row. Practice starts in 2 weeks. And it was like I had so much more energy for those little rascals last year because of the T. And they'd say, Coach Chris, man, you're doing backflips in the outfield. What's gotten into you? I go, well, testosterone replacement therapy, ladies. You go to Game Day Men's Health in Ankeny, West Des Moines.
Wait, were you were trying to get young girls on testosterone treatments?
No, they asked what had gotten into me. They're like, you have so much more energy this year, Coach. Yeah, it's because of the tea, ladies.
Can Game Day Men's Health sponsor the Turtles this year?
That would be funny.
I don't know if we're allowed to bring on corporate sponsors or not. I think we'd have a lot of people lining up, to be honest with you. Also, our friends at Freedom Tire. Are you going to Kansas City this week? Are you driving there? Where is the Big Ten? Is it Indianapolis or Chicago this year?
I believe it's Indianapolis.
Okay.
But I honestly...
Or like Washington?
I mean, it's all over. I don't... I did not think Iowa was going to be there, so I didn't even look ahead to it. I was very surprised that Iowa won that game. They were 7.5-point dogs. Where is it at? Indy. That's where the women's was, so I assumed it was the same
Indy,
sort of
okay.
thing.
Well, if you're driving to Indy, Kansas City, got to get the Freedom Tire, man. You got to let those guys check over the tires, give you the oil change, give you the full Freedom Tire experience before you hit the road for spring break. Let's be honest, most of you probably aren't going to Indy. A lot of you are probably taking the kids south. Go to Freedom Tire. Our buddies, they are great supporters of everything we're doing here on Iowa Everywhere, and specifically the Two Guys Show. We absolutely love them. Iowa State goes on the road and wins at Kansas State, which was I felt more relief after that game than I did, like, joy, if I'm being honest. We find out in the morning that Keyshawn Gilbert is not playing. Kind of a rest day for him as you get loaded up to potentially play 4 games in 4 days if everything goes swimmingly in Kansas City. And then you've got the NCAA tournament after that. And Iowa State really dominates. I mean, there was really not much question if you were watching that game who was going to win. I was very careful after the game, Chris, to not overreact to the win. Kansas State was horrible.
Yeah, that's not the same Kansas State team that came into Hilton.
No. And Iowa State played considerably better than they did that day in Hilton Coliseum as well. But
Sure.
Kansas State is done. Like, they are absolute toast. But we want to talk about Keyshawn Gilbert. And I know we both want to talk about this Nate Heise technical because we might have differing opinions on it. And then I've done a little bit of research on what Iowa State's road to the second weekend could potentially look like.
Okay.
As far as 6 seeds, assuming they're a 3 seed, who that 2 seed could be in the NCAA. What were your thoughts on the Cyclones?
Good, fine. You did. You bounced back. You won. You probably save yourself from falling to the 4 line. I don't know. I'm not ready to buy into this team until I see them do it consistently, and I just haven't seen it. I'm just, maybe that happens this week at the Big 12 tournament. They showed that they didn't turn it over as much, played really good defense. Whatever. I think that I'm more interested in talking about some of the other points, like the Nate Heise thing.
I thought that was one of the worst technicals I'd ever seen.
See, I disagree. Now, the only thing I'll say to that is
Come on.
You can't make any kind of gesture to an opposing bench or head coach. It was right there. You can't do that. Even if he would have turned around and fist pumped right in Tang's face, he would have gotten a technical foul. A salute technical foul. Now, the only thing I'll say is if they only teed him up because they thought he was making a gun gesture, then I would say that's a mistake. That's what they were arguing about, yes. I think that's what they told TJ, that he was making a gun gesture, and that's why they teed him up. And TJ said, no, that's a 3 gesture. He's got the 3. And you saw the official there. The official, with his hand, was making a gun gesture.
I don't think Nate Heise was given a gun gesture.
He wasn't. But I think that is what the official's reason for it was. But I'm saying you can't even do the 3 gesture that demonstrative like that right in front of an opposing head coach.
Demonstrative, it lasted like a tenth of a second.
You can't do that. You're always going to get teed. In my opinion, you're always going to get teed up if you make some kind of taunting gesture to a opposing player.
What about the crowd?
Bench coach. What about
if he would have done that gesture to
I think he could have looked up into the stands and gone boom, and it would have been fine. Not with a gun, but with the 3.
I see this all the time.
It's that he did it right in front of the bench. To me, that's what immediate technical.
I understand your point. I wish these officials were not as quick to call the stupid. Like, it was completely harmless. Same with the play about 2 minutes later where the Kansas State guy slapped the bench. Come on, what are we doing? What the hell are we doing?
And I think
are we just trying to take all fun and emotion out of this? Is that the goal here?
I think they called that next one because they felt kind of bad about the first one.
I completely agree. It's horrible.
So they gave that back to Iowa State.
I don't know. I don't know if I want them to use discretion, but it's Nate Heise. The guy doesn't talk shit.
He kind of does, though. We've been talking about it on this show.
Yeah.
He did it at Oklahoma State. He's bebopping and scatting. He's feeling so good. He's too much in his bag now.
Now he's got a reputation.
Yeah. But I love the way he's playing, but my sister and brother-in-law were down this weekend visiting. There they are.
That guy who kind of looks like you.
He doesn't look at all like me. He looks more like Van
So that's
Winkle
your
than
sister?
me. Yes, that's my sister Mary.
And she lives in Corning?
Nope. She lives in Des Moines with Matt.
Hello, Matt. They listeners to the program? Like the program?
Yes. Matt is a big Iowa State fan. He went to Iowa State. He was one of the guys that made the George Niang thing for the Cyclone Alley. You know that thing that the George Niang.
Oh, the Big George. That's in Wallabies right now.
Yeah, he was one of those guys.
Well done, Matt.
Nice.
And he goes to a bunch of games.
Good-looking guy.
He was like, I hate to say this. I really hate to say this. But I think we're better without Gilbert. I think we're a better team without Gilbert. He's not the same player he was. I think we have a better flow. I think there's too much uncertainty when he's on the court. Who's going to take the shot? And
can I semi-agree?
I want your guys' take on this because I didn't really know what to say.
I think the offense looks better without him.
And why is that?
Dribbling, he dribbles too much.
Randy Peterson says he disagrees.
However, hold on. Can everybody just tap the brakes for
Big
1
Papa
second?
says a lot fewer turnovers without him.
Can everybody just tap the freaking brakes and let me finish my goddamn
Peter says,
point?
yes, I'm sick of Gilbert's bullcrap.
Everybody needs to calm down. Dude had 8 steals against BYU. If you're giving me a choice to have that guy or not have that guy, I want him every time.
Mm-hmm.
He is a menace defensively. Iowa State beats Houston if Keyshawn Gilbert's in the lineup. No doubt in my mind, Cryer's not going off the way that he did.
That's the thing. I think it's mostly when you're
It's
thinking,
a net
this
win.
team looks better without him, it's only on the offensive end at some points because of the dribbling, because of the turnovers. But what he gives you defensively is so much more.
Completely agree. I would just that's where I do think there's a level of more efficiency with the offense. But is that a net win? When you take away he is your nastiest on-ball defender. I mean, Lipsy's really good. Lipsy's super consistent. Dude had 8 steals against BYU. It's one of the all-time great defensive games we've seen at Iowa State in years.
Okay, so what's going on with him now? Is this just shutting him down for rest? Is this thing still really bothering him? What is going on?
Well, I think that this is a deal where from what I understand, he doesn't feel right. This is not a situation where it's like, oh, you've got a torn meniscus. And it's they keep saying muscle strain. What does that mean? That's pretty freaking vague, right? Is it like tendonitis? Is it like whatever? Like why?
The problem with that is it doesn't go away unless you rest it for a long period of time, and that's not, you don't have that ability right now. And you got maybe 4 games in 4 days coming up.
So, I mean, I absolutely tell him we have to have you in Kansas City. Because what you can't do is play for 2, 3, 4 days down there without him and get in a completely different rhythm and then bring him back for the NCAA tournament. He's your primary ball handler. This is this team's problem. They can't get into a goddamn flow because there's a different guy injured every time you go out there. This is why they're turning the ball over so much. You've got to get these guys playing together consistently. So, 2 points here. I absolutely would rather have him than not. I don't think that's not even a question for me. And 2, you really, 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 really need this guy to get going in Kansas City.
Interesting choice of song lyrics to tweet out, though, before that game.
Completely agree. What's
Love
he
your
doing?
ass to death, but you can't play with my intelligence. All I want is money. All that other shit irrelevant. Yeah, like, what? So I didn't even know that was a song lyric to begin with, but obviously the younger folks do. Or if you listen to hip hop, I don't know who sings that, but it's just a lyric. But why
did you
lyric?
tweet it out?
Yeah, it's like, come on.
Just put the phone away, guys.
Yeah. This is why coaches, they wish they could keep them off social media, but at this point, you can't.
Like, I get it. Like, in his mind, he's tweeting out song lyrics to a song that he likes. The problem is 90% of Iowa State's fan base that's reading it has no clue.
Right.
He didn't do anything wrong. It's just, if you're a 50-year-old dude from Ankeny reading that, how the hell are you going to take that? We just find out the guy's out. And, the whole thing is just, don't tweet the lyrics, Keyshawn. I know you love it. It's all good. You didn't do anything wrong. Don't tweet any more rap lyrics until
They might have just been sitting there in the locker room vibing to that song, and everybody's getting hyped for the game to that song, so he tweeted out the lyrics, but it's just, yes, many of us don't get it. And the other thing, to my point, is like, why those lyrics specifically? Obviously, you read into lyrics, and it's
you're not wrong for doing that.
Then after the game, you retweeted this video. I think Jeff Dubroff posted. He said, "Belt boys." He's holding the belt, and he's like slapping a belt to his hand.
Is that a belt?
Yes.
Where did he get it? Did he take it off of one of the assistant coaches' waists?
Must
Belt to ass.
I love Keyshawn. I love the dude's swagger. Like, if they can get him back to killer mode, it takes his team to a whole different level. But the problem is we just haven't seen it for a really long time.
I was looking at his numbers, too, this year compared to last year. So last year he had, averaged 2 steals a game. He's right on pace with last year. He's got a few fewer steals this year, but still turning it over at a lot higher number. So those turnovers and those steals don't quite balance each other out yet. But
the other thing, though, Matt,
right?
you just have to factor in they're playing at so much faster pace now. So he's the primary ball handler now, and they're also having so many more possessions a game. So it's not a perfect. You're not wrong. None of this is none of it's perfect. I'd still rather have him than not.
What
Especially
are the projections showing for?
Yeah, so if you're a 3 seed, you're looking at like a game against maybe Michigan or Memphis. Michigan would terrify me.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to see Dusty May.
Michigan, Memphis are the 6 seed possibilities that I keep bumping into.
I don't know much about Memphis. They're sitting down there in the American. They're clearly the best team in that conference.
I think you'd outcoach him.
You don't, yeah, but I'm sure they've got some really, really good players.
Matt,
so right
give me
now,
the other 6 seeds on Palms right there.
Is that Palm? Is this Palm or Lenardi?
That's Palm.
This is
right there.
Yeah.
The other thing, too, is just like you got to factor in here the 2 seeds are going to be really good.
Missouri's another 6.
Yeah, and that would be really interesting with Caleb Grill.
Oh, my God, that would be
The
interesting.
storylines to that would be electric. Sign me up for that today.
Got Arizona as a 6.
Probably won't get Arizona.
These 2 seeds are all these SEC teams like A&M, Bama, Tennessee, and I don't know. Like, are they that good?
Would you rather play Tennessee or Michigan State as the 2?
Michigan State looks pretty damn good right now.
I know. I had this debate in my head last night because I think they're both really good. But who would you rather play?
Texas A&M. They're a 2 seed.
Yeah, give me them every day.
That's the one you want, I think.
Mississippi State is in there as a 6.
Yeah, and I don't like.
I have
They've been
no
right
idea.
there around. That's
They
that's
feel like
Chris
those
Jans.
Baylor teams that get the 6 just because they've been a part of the Big 12 in the past. I don't know.
It's going to be interesting though. Here, a week from right now, we're going to know. We know where you're headed.
Noah points. I forgot Tyrese Hunter's at Memphis again. Guy's been there for.
That's right. Jeez.
If you had
You got
to be-
revenge games all over the place here with Grill at Missouri and Tyrese Hunter at Memphis.
If you had to be in a region with one of the 1 seeds that are projected right now, so Houston, Florida, Duke, Auburn, do you want to be in with Auburn because you know you can play with them?
I want Duke.
Hell no, you don't want Duke.
I want Duke.
I mean,
Because I don't think you can get. I don't think they would get Houston.
I would want Florida. I think
Florida or
I think
Duke.
I think there are 3 teams that are clearly 1, 2, 3 at the top, and it's Auburn, Duke, and Houston.
I think
and then
Duke
I think
is
there's a
talented.
drop off, and all those other teams are 2 and 3 seeds.
I think
Florida,
Duke is-
Tennessee, A&M.
Duke is incredibly talented. There's no doubt about that. I wonder.
Yeah, if they get in a
Tournament-wise.
tight game, if they get pressed, because they're beating teams by 30 and 40
That's the
points
thing.
every
Like
night.
the ACC is so bad. And I don't know. That's why I said Duke. I just don't know how young team like that. Like I would take my chances with them before I would Auburn.
Yeah, Auburn, they lost again. They lost to Alabama. They've lost back-to-back games. They're still going to be the number 1 overall seed, most likely.
Bama, man, watch out for them. Nate Oates is a hell of a coach.
Nate
down
Oates.
there. All right. Well, I am heading to Kansas City tomorrow. I believe this is what our plan is.
Yeah, so what time's the Iowa State game on
11:30.
on Wednesday?
Yes. It'll be at 11:30 on Wednesday and Thursday, assuming that they would win on Wednesday.
Okay.
So we are thinking that we will do our second show this week on Friday morning. Are you cool with that?
Yes, unless Iowa State somehow loses that
yes,
first
and
game.
then we could do it on Thursday.
Okay.
Because if we do it on Thursday and they're playing, the show's going to be dated in like an hour.
Hey, and we've got Iowa who could make a run.
We do.
Don't forget about those Hawkeyes, those 15-seeded Hawkeyes.
Hawkeyes made March Madness. Do 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 do.
And Nebraska didn't. How about Iowa just tormenting Nebraska?
What if
in every
Nebraska,
sport?
what if Nebraska would not make the Big Ten tournament, but they would make the NCAA tournament?
Well, that is not going to happen.
I saw last night somebody still had them on like the first 4 out, and I was like, what? Appreciate all of you guys watching.
Matt, what are you doing?
Somebody
You
just sent me
Photoshop
this.
my face
I didn't
on-
do this. A listener just sent this in.
That's disturbing. You Photoshop my face on my brother-in-law's body.
I love our audience.
If he's going to be down in
Appreciate-
Kansas City, if someone take a picture with him.
Appreciate all of our great sponsors. Fareway Meat and Grocery, been with us from day one.
Pinky out.
We'll see you guys in Kansas City. We have Murph and Andy later today at 1. Overthinking is today at noon here on Iowa Everywhere.